Howdy folks, my name is Ty, and today I'm gonna be walking through the songwriting process. A lot of people find songwriting very daunting. It's a topic that people come up across, and it's like, okay, I want to write a song, but how exactly am I supposed to do that? Well, in this video, I'm gonna be showing you my songwriting process. Now, it's not gonna be an exact professional song. I'm doing it for the video for the purpose of showing you how you can make your own song, how you can put it together yourself, and how it all works out. So I'm going to do that, and I'm also going to be trying to use a couple other tools in this video that I haven't always used, just to make things a little bit easier in your songwriting process. Maybe if there's a few tools that'll help you out as you're a beginner, if you're just starting out. So we're just going to get right into it. Usually every time I do it, especially on the iPad, what I usually go into first is GarageBand. This is exactly what I start with. Then I'll just go create a new song, and then a lot of people wonder, okay, so when I'm writing a song, what do I start with? Well, anything, to be completely honest. So you can start it in any way. I've started it with bass before, I've started it with drums before. It really doesn't matter. I've even started it with a trumpet before. So let's start with a drum beat. So when you're doing it, think of what you want. So just play around. Basically, just play around with it. Okay, so once you get like a basic thing down, you can record it. We're gonna do it at 90. So I'm just gonna record this. Okay, so I got like a basic drum thing down. Let's hear how it sounds. Cool, so we've got that. So what I normally do is I go out to the window here and I sort of play through that a couple times. And because what I did with this is with the drums, if you are starting with drums, is a good tip to keep in mind. You don't have to put every bit of drumming in this part. You can leave cymbals out. You can just do the bass and the snare. That's what I usually do. I leave the cymbals out until next, unless I can play them all together and I have an exact idea of knowing what I want to do. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on the drum icon and I'm going to go duplicate. So it's duplicated the track. Then I'm going to go back to the drum pads. I'm going to play through this. And then I'm going to play with some of the cymbals. So I don't like the sound of the cymbals. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to find another drum. So using other drums is cool because then you can get different sounds and you can work it in together with your drums that you already have. So we can just play with it now. And the big thing to take away from this video, if you're going to take anything, is play around. Once you think you've got something cool, oh, okay, what do I do with this now? Play around with it, because that is the best way. I wrote a song, and you can see it on my Spotify page. It's called Only 4. Basically with that song, it has the main part, but towards the end of the song, there's sort of like a false ending type thing. That whole section came from just playing around with the thing. Like, I walked out the room, and then my buddy Adrian, who was doing the piano for that song, shout out to Adrian, he was doing the piano, and he was just playing around with it, and I walked back in, I was like, yo, that sounds pretty good. And it ended up being my favorite part of the whole song, and it ended up being awesome. So playing around can never be underestimated. It is one of the best things you can do when you're writing a song. And jamming with other people, getting other people's opinion, is also a very helpful tool when you're making music. Alright, so we're playing around now. So I think I've got something basic. And then if you haven't looked at my GarageBand tutorial, check out, it's the last video. I'll have it in a card probably somewhere on top of the screen. And this explains what I'm about to do if you don't know. But I'm going to quantize these and make sure they're quantized. They might automatically be quantized. So yeah, these are automatically quantized. But basically, yeah, it makes everything's on the beat. It's not out of time. So I think that's pretty good for just a basic thing. Then what we're gonna do is, usually after a drum, I usually like to add the bass second, and I always use the keyboard, especially on GarageBand. I always use a keyboard as a bass. Alright, so I think I've come up with something relatively okay, so I'm just gonna record over the top. So this is how it sounds. And it's funny, even just playing around, just trying to do something basic for a video, I actually kind of like this. So usually when I do a bass or something similar, or even the melody or the chord progression, usually what I like to do is I like to layer it. So what I'm going to do is I can either duplicate the P bass, or I can do something completely different. layered it over a little bit. So at this point, this is when I'm listening to it, I will start to think about chord progressions and rhythm, and also I will start to think about melodies. And I sort of sing to myself as it's going through, like sort of scat to myself, or I'll pick up my trumpet and start playing. But what we're gonna do next is, first of all, I'm gonna turn my fan on because it is too hot to not have the fan on here. I'm gonna start to work on the rhythm section. Now, this is the part where I find it the hardest sometimes. Well, not the hardest thing of the whole song, but the fact is getting sounds. What sounds do you want? What sounds do you like? Basically just playing through the song. And sometimes it might get a little bit tedious listening to the same thing over and over again. Once you feel like you got a sound that you kind of like, play around with it a little bit. So I've picked the Helix. Another question that might come up is, oh, you're adding all these instruments and all these bass parts now, but what about the intro? What about having your intro and verse separate? What about this, and that? The fact is that you don't have to lay it out and organize the song to begin with. Once you're doing what you want to do to begin with and have sounds that you want to do, stick on that. Then once you finish building on what you think you've done and what you feel is cool, then decide where that goes in the song. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just building on what I have, and then I'm going to position it in the song where I think it should go. And at this point I'm getting verse vibes. I'm feeling like this is going to be just the main verse part of my song. Let's just record this part. 2, 3, 4. Then usually what I do is I go and I get my trusty old trumpet. So I'm just going to play through it. So I'll do something like that. Not everything I play on the trumpet when I come up with it, I don't always play that part of the song on the trumpet. I'll just make it with the trumpet and then put it onto another instrument. Sort of like a background thing. What I also use sometimes is, what I could use is samples. Now I don't know where my samples have gone, but we can record a new sample. I could grab my trumpet or grab my voice. I might just, why don't we do both? Why can't we do both? What's stopping us from doing both? So yeah, this is a sample. I've decided to use my voice instead of the trumpet. It's a little bit quiet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the gain for that a little bit. So it's good, it's in the background. It's at full volume. The problem with that is it's got to be hard to raise if I need it raised later on. I mean, it's in the background, so it's not really an issue right now, but because I recorded it quietly, and that's another thing you gotta keep in mind, recording levels are very important, because if you record it too quietly, once you try and raise it when you're mixing, that's not gonna work well, because of the fact that it's too quiet, you can't raise it any further. I needed it louder, and if you record it too loud, you could distort the audio because the levels are too high. So now that we have this, what I'm gonna do, duplicate that, I'm gonna copy that, I'm gonna go down here, back to the beginning, paste that. Then what I'm gonna do, again, look at my previous video for how to do all of these specific things. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down up here, transposition, I'm gonna go down an octave. So now it's, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing again. Transposition, up one. Basically what I do is I don't do any of my editing usually in GarageBand. Usually what I do is I export all the tracks individually into Cubasis 3. But for those of you who don't have the money to spend on an app that expensive, can do a lot of editing. Like if I was to go in here, I can add reverb. So I added reverb to all of them. Adds a little bit more to them. I like to leave them raw in GarageBand. I find GarageBand is one of the best things to record into, and it's a lot better in Cubasis to edit. So you're happy with it where it is. Seasons changing all around me, feeling it slow. Talking about, don't know where I'll go. Basically what you can do when you play through it is just sort of chuck stuff out there. Again, play around with it, because you know half the time the good stuff comes out when you're playing around. So say you've got this Pretty happy with it. For example, just for time's sake, so I don't make this video too long, just so you get the essential idea of what I'm going for. Say this is your song. Say you had some rough vocals. Let's just do some right now. Okay, we're gonna go with this, just for the sake of it. Say something about it. Something, something. Say something about it. Say something about it. Something, something. Say something about it. Oh yeah. Something, something. Okay, so now when you've got your vocals, whatever, done, usually I export it after I've done everything, like everything in the song's done. So what I would do now, after making sure that I like everything, I'm gonna make sure that the song finishes at the bar that I finished recording at. Then what I'm gonna do is, this is the one thing I don't like about GarageBand. If there is a way to do this better, please let me know in the comments. But what I have to do to export everything individually is I have to solo it, then go out, share that as a song, uncompressed wave share. Then what I have to do, go open in, then I'll wait for it to export. And then once it's finished exporting, it'll come up with opening Cubasis 3. Then I'll go to a new project. Then what I'm gonna do is the audio, because I copied it over to Cubasis, it should already be in my audio files. So I'll double tap on that and then it'll just drop right in here, and it should. Yeah. So it's copied into it. It's the full thing. Then this is just a tedious process. You basically have to repeat the same thing for every instrument. So I'll come back when I've done that. So basically we've got all the tracks in here now. It does take some time, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit annoying and tedious, but that's what I like to do because of the fact that having it in Cubasis from GarageBand, it makes the initial music production part of making the song and everything, or the music writing part, easy. And then the music production part is in Cubasis, and it makes it a lot higher quality, and everything just comes out better and it sounds better. So everything's going to be a little bit off when you first put it in here. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up here, and I just adjust all the levels and everything. Okay, so I've got the basic levels done, just to make everything a little bit more balanced. From here you can do solo, and I like to work on each thing individually. So with the drums, you can send effects or insert effects. I've just edited it just to add a little bit of flair to it, and then this is just basically the whole sequence. You just go through and edit everything individually. It took me a while, like I've been all up. This whole thing of just making this whole recording has been about an hour. I'm looking at the recording, it's about it's 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Basically, it does take a lot of time, and if you want to make a quality song to finish the song, it does take a lot more time. It's just how I do it. And once from here, basically I'll just mix it down, and then I'll send it off and ready to be put on an album or as a single, or ready to be released. That's basically it. There's not much to it. Just to review some points, you can start with anything. It doesn't have to be starting with a bass or a drum or anything. You can start with anything you feel like. And when you do multiple songs, once you've done your first one, you want to do another one, try starting that song with something different. The second one is play around. That's probably the most important point of this video. Play around with everything. Playing around gets you some good ideas, and it sort of contributes a massive amount to the song. Third of all, when you're editing it, make sure you edit it. It doesn't matter what it's in, doesn't matter if you export it out of the app you're using to edit it. Just make sure you edit it in a way that enhances the sound. Don't over edit by adding too much onto it, but then don't under edit where it would sound awful if you didn't add any edits to it. So find that sort of the balance of it all, making sure you put on the right amount of efforts, even if it's not heard very much. As an individual track, does it sound better, and does it take away or does it contribute to the full song? If it takes away, then don't have it on. If it doesn't really do anything, or if it contributes to make it sound better, cool, just leave it on. Hopefully this was effective. If you have any other questions, I'll probably be doing a lot more videos like this talking about songwriting and things like that. But if you have any questions or if you like this video, let me know. Hopefully you can go now and be fine with writing your first song, or at least find this helpful to write your first song, and it's hopefully made it a lot easier of a process for you. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.